Electric vehicles, they've no soul, there's no passion in them. You don't get the engine noise, they're not for enthusiasts, they're just for commuters. They take too long to charge, you can't go far enough on them. To be honest with you, I've heard it all, and frankly, I'm getting a little bit sick of it. So today what we're here to do is dispel that hyperbole by using two machines from legacy manufacturers. From Porsche, we have the Taycan. Now, we've already driven the Taycan on the channel, the Turbo, but here it is in its purest rear-wheel drive form. And for those of you who prefer your thrills on two wheels, from, of all people, Harley-Davidson, a naked street bike, something they've never done before, and it's all pure electric. So, do these two deliver the thrills that you would expect for an enthusiast machine? Well, we're going to try them both today and find out.
But Brian, you can't ride a bike.
Well, how hard can it be? I mean, I've seen other people do it. All right, health and safety and all that. Hang on. Yeah, hi, yeah, it's Brian from Auto EV. Yeah, listen, are you busy? Can you do me a favour? Could you pop down and ride a bike for me, please? Yeah, a motorbike. Yeah, perfect. Yep, excellent. See you soon. Right, he's on his way. Ah, you're here.
I am.
Exactly.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. You're good. Look, thanks for doing this.
That's right. Well, apparently Katie tells me that your daughter, that you're pretty useless at riding motorcycles.
Well, yeah, I see. I've seen people do it. I don't know how hard it can be. I mean, you can do it. But...
Well, you know, I make it look hard, you know, but it's actually quite easy.
Perfect,
you know.
perfect. Well, look, I believe you've got a bit of experience riding these electric motorbikes a distance. And what we're going to try and do today is dispel the myth that electric vehicles aren't for enthusiasts. So you take the bike, I'll take the car, and we'll have a bit of a road trip.
Fantastic. Yeah, well, no, I'm looking forward to it. But so at some stage, can we, am I allowed to drive that, and we could sort of swap vehicles? You have a go on this, and I'll give a go on that as well. And then we can have a sort of a rounded opinion.
You're just hurting my feelings now, because you know I can't do it. Just get on the bike.
It's always nice to be out on the road when it's wet on a motorbike. It's always very pleasant. Following a car with lots of spray, and it's just very, very nice. Well, we're here to talk about the Porsche Cayenne, which you can see behind me here, and the Harley-Davidson Livewire. And you know, the two of them are come from sort of high-end manufacturing. So you've got the Porsche badge, got the Harley-Davidson badge. You know, they all both mean freedom and adventure and travel and being out on the open road and that whole experience, that riding experience. And I think what Harley-Davidson have done, which is quite extraordinary when you think about who they are and what they've done and where they've come from, they've suddenly come out with this bike here. And it's an electric Harley-Davidson Livewire, which is basically a naked sports bike, really. And it's incredibly fast. It does 0 to 60 in just under 3 seconds. It does about 120, 130 mile range. And it's a fun bike to ride in the dry when it's not raining like it is now. I've spent quite a bit of time on the Harley-Davidson. Ewan and I went on a very long trip called Long Way Up. Went from the bottom of Argentina to Los Angeles. So we've gotten used to the idea of range anxiety, which I think a lot of people have. So for today's purposes, we're talking about the Porsche Taycan and the Harley-Davidson Livewire. And they both come from this kind of luxury big brand pedigree. You know, the Porsche, as we all know it, you know, the Harley-Davidson, as we know, which is the sort of out on the open road, the big V-twin, you know, freedom and all this kind of stuff. And I suppose the similar kind of thing for the Porsche, you know, get out there, do a track day. And then suddenly the electric of it all came along, and Harley-Davidson have built an electric Harley-Davidson, which handles incredibly well. I mean, it does 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. It does ridiculous speeds, and that 40 to 80 is crazy. You know, when you're overtaking cars and stuff like that, it's just amazing. And the balance and the feel and the I mean, it's a proper track day tool. I took it around Brands Hatch, and it rides pretty well. And when you consider how much power there is, 100% power, 100% of the time. It's not like these old combustion engines which have to build up to the power. So they are kind of fun. I've not ridden this one yet, or driven the Porsche yet, which I'm really excited to. But you know, the two of them come from that interesting pedigree, that interesting brand, and they are fun to drive and ride. Well, maybe, I don't know yet, but certainly nice to ride. So this one is a Ccs Charger, which is the more common one. Tesla have just gone that way, so I suppose the whole world will. It has a 50 kilowatt battery. It takes about 45 minutes to get to about 80%. And you can get around, you know, if you're not sitting on a motorway and just doing sort of country lanes or town, you can get about 130 to 140 mile range. So it's pretty good.
Now, we've already filmed with the Taycan, but that was the turbo. This is now the lead-in car to the range. Now, a few people have been calling it the rear-wheel drive, but in essence it's just called the Porsche Taycan. It's a single motor, so in other words, it just rear-wheel drive, which makes it in essence the closest in concept to Porsche's stalwart, the 911, because obviously the weight of the motor's at the back. There's no driven wheels at the front, so they're just for the steering, as God intended. And it makes the car, well, you see, the thing is, I've always found with Porsches, it's not necessarily the fastest one that's the best. I always think that actually further down the range is where you tend to find the real jewel in the crown. And I have to say, having spent a bit of time with this car, I think it's the same. The steering just feels slightly more direct, slightly more in tune with the road. There isn't the weight above the axle that you get with the heavier twin motor one, so it's not as corrupted a feeling as you get into the corner, and you can really set the car up for a corner nicely. And just when you feel the car dig in at the front, a nice application of throttle gives the power at the back, and the car just swings around that corner really, really well. So I have to say, I think of the range, this is the better one. Now, it's not startling when it comes to performance. There obviously has to be some kind of trade-off. The car produces, with its standard battery, 320 brake horsepower. When you're in launch control, that increases on a standing start acceleration to 380 horsepower. Now, this particular car that we've got today has the Performance Battery Plus, which actually not only increases the size of the battery to 93 kilowatts, but it also gives more horsepower. It gives 380 horsepower and then 476 in launch control. But even so, the performance isn't, well, it's not to 60 in 5 seconds. Charley's bike, to give you some idea and context, does 0 to 60 in 2.9 seconds. So, yep, it is lagging behind. But you know what? There's a part of me just feels that this is fast enough. I think the problem you sometimes get with electric cars is you get so hung up on these insane traffic light Grand Prix acceleration times that you forget that sometimes it's how they drive is the most important. And what I find with this model of Taycan is they've engineered it to feel like a Porsche, first and foremost, and then an electric Porsche secondary. Now let me justify that a little bit with you now. As I say, the steering has a really nice fluid feel to it. There's a delicacy in the chassis that I didn't really get with the turbo. It felt a little bit disconnected almost when I drove it. This base model Taycan doesn't feel like that. It feels a bit more fluid. It feels like I'm able to string those corners together just that little bit better. Now, Along with the other Taycans, you can obviously get your drive mode selection down here on the steering wheel, and you've got range, which is obviously shuts everything down to maximise the range. The WLTP figures, by the way, of this car should give a range of about 300 miles, but in reality I'm seeing about 250 to 260. From range we go into normal, where everything's just set normally, and actually the car is very pleasant. The dampers are set just to slacken off a little bit. There's a nice, again, fluidity in the dampers. It soaks up the bumps. Nothing feels jarring through the car. And from there we go into sport, and that gives a slightly sharper throttle, a little bit more punch out of the bends. Dampers are firmed up a little bit so the car doesn't feel like it's pitching, but it's not uncomfortable at all. And then from there we go into Sport Plus, which gives us really firmed up on the dampers and a really aggressive sort of like acceleration. But obviously, as I say, it's not a car that's designed to do that 0 to 60 in a blink of an eye. It's designed to be a Porsche, and I really like that. I think that's a really good way to start. And obviously, not only is it got the biggest range of all the Taycans, but it's the cheapest. So surely that's a win-win. I think so. You know, following you, Charlie, on the bike, I mean, it's an incredible looking machine. I mean, but
Even in the wet.
even in the wet, in this rain we've had. But what differences are there to this Livewire to the one that you and Ewan rode in Long Way Up? What did Harley do to this to make it suitable for your trip?
Well, it was a good question, I have to say. What was really interesting about the whole thing is when this was 2018 that we started sort of looking as to see who could help us, and it was 2019 that we did the trip.
Yeah.
And we actually went round to all the big manufacturers, you know, the big names, you know, Yamaha, Honda, and all these Kawasaki, all these different people, and none of them really had anything, and it was really only between Harley-Davidson and another company called Zero, who both have been, you know, and this was just about going into production. Zero had been for quite a while, and we tried them out, but the Harley-Davidson came out as the sort of number one. They spent sort of 6.5 years developing this bike, and they'd gone around the world, got loads of people to ride it, to give their impression and their feedback to it. So they really took it seriously, and that whole electric side of Harley-Davidson is becoming something quite interesting. But they, so when we approached them, because this is basically a sort of street sports bike,
exactly.
You know, naked sports bike, as they say.
Not suitable for what you were planning on doing.
No, and we said to them, look, guys, we would be super interested, but would you be able to sort of beef it up a bit and make it look like our long way kind of that we need, you know, adventure bikes? And they kind of looked at us and they thought I think their first reaction was, what? You know, but they really embraced the whole idea of it. I think they really thought, you know, we can do this. And they were already making the Pan American.
Okay,
which is their adventure bike.
And
so they took the front end of the Pan American, and they just there's only 4 bolts here which you could take off, and you just change the front end, and then they jacked up the back, changed this back bit here to put panniers on, and that was it. I mean, it was probably a little bit harder than that. I mean, they went out and they tested it to make sure that the headstock wouldn't fall off and stuff like that, and that, you know, that it would actually work.
Yeah, and I mean, it must have been quite. I mean, as I say, I mean, I know a little about bikes, but not obviously a huge amount. But it must have been quite Harley-Davidson. I think you mentioned that. You don't normally associate them with that style of bike, let alone an electric bike.
You don't. And I tell you, you know, it's when we went on our trip on the Long Way Up, you know, with Ewan, you know, and we would go along and we'd go and ask someone if we could charge the bikes while we had lunch or something like that, and we'd say, oh, you know, they say, oh, you know, we've got electric bikes, and they go, okay, you know, and they're pretty happy to let us plug in. I don't think we ever had anyone who said no, and then they say, oh, what type of bikes are they? And we said Harley-Davidson. And they'd look at, and they would laugh exactly like that. They would laugh, and they go, "What, Harley-Davidsons?" And you go, "Where's the noise?" You know?
Dennis Hopper or something.
Yeah, but so you know, it's quite interesting. But I think you know, we're at a position now where all the big manufacturers are making proper vehicles now, which are electric, and the charging of it will only get faster. a bit like when petrol cars first came out, there was nowhere to buy petrol. You bought petrol in a chemist, and that's if they had it. And then slowly the infrastructure came about. And I think, you know, we're at that stage now where people have that range anxiety because, you know, the infrastructure isn't quite there. But I think, and people are fearful of change.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, so they're scared of change. They don't like it. I was sitting with this bike the other day somewhere else, and this guy came up to me and he goes, "Hey, God, that's a beautiful bike. It's a great bike. It's stunning. What is it?" And I said, "Oh, it's electric Harley." He went, "Oh, electric, horrible," and he walked off.
I think you're right, and I do, and I think what we've found certainly with testing of cars now is we've gone away from sort of like saying it's good for an electric car. It's just a good car.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. You know, I think that's where we're at now. And as I say, it's getting people's mindset shifted in the sense that, you know, this is the equivalent of, you know, a high-powered BMW M, you know, Grand Tourer or whatever, you know, and for manufacturers like Porsche and Harley-Davidson to stand there and say, this is the route we're going down.
Yeah,
I think that should give people confidence.
You know, it's a line in the sand.
Yeah,
you know, and this is our history. Here's the line in the sand of the history, and this is where we're going next. I mean, you know, and already Tesla's talking about opening up their chargers to other people, which I think is great. The more chargers, the better. I mean, if we put a charger in every single petrol station, and what a difference that would make as well.
But it's also, I think, another point that you make as well, and I think one of the things that I took away from watching the show was there's an adventure behind it. You know, people want to, you know, there's a destination. You change the way that you do a trip perhaps because you know you're going to have to factor in, I'm going to have to stop some. I mean, we did a trip recently with an electric car to visit my family in Scotland, and it was no different if we'd taken, you know, sort of like a diesel Land Rover or something. You know, we stopped halfway, we had a bit of lunch. While we were doing that, we were charging up, we got back in and we drove. I don't want to drive 6 hours non-stop. So I was able to stop, take a bit of a break, have something to eat, use the bathrooms or whatever, and head off again.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I think that's great. And what we're doing now is we're seeing dedicated charging stations now. So and you can go in, you can plug your bike in, or your car or your bike in, and you go in and there's a conference room, there's a place you can do meetings, there's a gym. Yeah. So you can eat some food. So the whole idea of it, instead of just leaving at whatever time, you say, right, well, okay, I've got to leave here. I've got to get to this point to charge. What I'll do is I'll make sure that I'll get there for about midday, 1 o'clock. I'll have lunch while I'm waiting, and then off you go. Exactly. And people forget that it only takes, you know, for 80%, it only takes 35, 40 minutes.
Well, that's it. You know, and as we said earlier, you know, the amount of miles you actually use in a day is very, very small. You know, I think the average commuter is something like about 24 miles. Yeah. You know, and something like, you know, the Porsche will take a fast charge. I mean, these will take speeds of up to 270 kilowatts.
Yeah,
so if you're able to find a charger that could deliver that.
I mean, you can find, you know, ones for 150 kilowatts, which is pretty fast. Yeah. But don't forget, you know, this will do 300 miles. Yeah. So you know, most people, even in their week, they're not doing 300 miles. So this would last 2 weeks, and it would only probably cost what at home to fill that 300 would only cost 3 or 4 quid. Yeah,
and, massive difference to fill it up with a tank of fuel.
Yeah, and so you're saving already. You're saving. You know, in a month you're probably saving 400 quid in fuel in a month, 300 quid in fuel in a month, and that is your 350, 400 quid that you're paying a month to lease the car. So, quid's in. So in that reason, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to ride this. You are going to do whatever you want with that. But
I'm just going to stand and look at it. Yeah.
But can I drive that? I would like to. I'll give it a go. Okay.
Don't break it.
The keys are under the seat there. So.
Perfect.
You know.
Go and see what you think of this then.
I will. Okay. All right. Well, I'll see you later. There's a nice sandwich bar up there if you're hungry.
Yeah, thanks.
And don't want to go anywhere. Oh, wait, you forgot this.
Oh.
You might need it.
Thanks.
Anyway, good luck with that.
Where does this go? I knew we should have got Ewan McGregor to do this.
Which way should we go? Let's go this way. Okay, hold on. Woo! All right, that's awesome. Woohoo! And that is just in normal mode. That is quite full-on power. That feels very nice. I've driven a couple of these cars in the past. I've driven the Tesla. I've driven the Nissan Leaf, which is a bit, whatever. But the Tesla's lovely, and I've ridden the i3, the Bmw I3. But this really feels like that you're sitting in a Porsche, doesn't it? And I tell you what, the dashboard and the layout is really nice. It's quite responsive. The throttle with the Livewire is very nice. It's very progressive. It's all fly-by-wire, so there's no cable anymore. And so sometimes you get a bit of a lag, whereas this, like the Livewire, has this really nice response. So yeah, I like it, and I like the whole look of the thing. I've got little map stuff. I'm completely obsessed with all that. Having a map here and a map here, and having all digital. I love all that rubbish. It's just fantastic. I have to say, I do like this layout much nicer than a lot of the other ones I've driven in the past. And this one I think is just rear-wheel drive. It's not four-wheel drive, and it feels really responsive. It feels quite tight, the whole car. When you're going around on the corners. Oh, hang on a minute. Do you want me to go that way? Actually, I'm going to go this way. It's funny, last week I was sitting there driving a bowler, one of those sort of off-road Dakar kind of vehicles, and today I'm in this sort of lap of luxury. God, it feels awesome, this car. Ooh. Oh yeah. I think I'm going to put it into sport mode now, see what difference that makes. I can see the cameraman thinking, do we really need to do that? Oh. There we go. That was nice. Ooh, lucky you weren't looking forward there. Almost hit that car. No, we didn't really. Woo! Oh, tell you, the thing about electric is that it's so responsive, and the power is so instant. It's not like a petrol engine where you have to build up the power to get there. The combustion engine going through the gears. This has 100% power straight away. It's just all there waiting. Oh my Lord. This is a nice car. I think I've been spoilt for life now. Anyway, this car really does have a lovely feeling to it. I'm really quite blown away by this Porsche. I think people talk about it, and they say how nice this car is, and that it's it's up there in the nicest cars, along with the Teslas and the Porsches and stuff like that. This is just a nice car to ride. Wow.
These are not the droids you're looking for. Whoom, whoom, whoom.
But it's very smooth. It feels it absorbs the bumps really nicely. It doesn't feel scary. The braking system is interesting. Apparently, what you do, so when you're going along, a lot of electric cars, when you take off your foot off the accelerator, it'll slow the car down. Whereas this one, what this does is, it doesn't do that, but when you put the brakes on lightly, it uses regen. So you're regenerating power into it. But when you put the brakes on heavily, that's when the brake pads are used. So it has quite an interesting take on it. Wow, it's very nice. And apparently this car as well will recharge. So my Harley will take 50 kilowatts of power, whereas this will go 200 plus. This will take, which means it can fast charge incredibly fast. Which means so that if you're, sitting at a garage, on the motorway or something like that, wanting to get a quick charge, and you can get a 200 kilowatt charger, this will take it, and that is fast. That means you can fill this car up in God knows how quickly. It's pretty impressive.
Choose life.
So I have to say, I suppose summing this up, jumping in this Porsche, didn't really realise or think what I was going to get. I've driven the Tesla and a few other cars that are all electric, but this really did surprise me. It's beautifully positioned. The dashboard is very pretty, very responsive throttle. Brakes are really good. I love the clever regen. So when you're using the brakes a little bit, it regens. It doesn't actually use the brakes until you brake really hard. It has handles where it goes over the bumps beautifully. It does the twists and turns really nice. Got my cameraman feeling a little sick, so that's always good. So I like it, I have to say. Everything seems to be in the right position. So, thumbs up. So Porsche, if you want to lend me one for the rest of the summer, I'd be very happy to take it on a long-termer. That's all I'm saying.
Charlie, now you've driven and ridden both, what do you think the future is going to be for electric vehicles for enthusiasts?
Well, what I think we've got in just in time, because it is just, cars and rain is fine. Bikes and rain is never as nice. I have to say, I really enjoyed the car. I thought it was amazing. I thought the Porsche really have come up with and it just feels like a really solid, nicely built car. It seems to handle really well. It absorbs the bumps and everything really well. It doesn't feel twitchy or anything like that. The throttle response is really nice.
I think what Porsche have done is really, really clever, and I think from what I know about the Harley as well, they've engineered it to be a Porsche first and an electric car second. And I think from what I've gathered from you today is that bike's the same. It's a Harley first and it's an electric Harley second almost.
Yeah, for sure. I think they're really nice. I think if the future's going to be like this, then I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It really is.
Well, look, Charlie, thanks really much for your time today, and despite the weather, we've had a great time. Thanks ever so much. Thanks everyone for watching. Yeah, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Auto EV. Can I have a shot in the bike now? No. You can go now.